Max Verstappen just got knocked out in Q2 at Suzuka, a track he dominated for years. A track where he made Formula 1 look easy. And now, he's outside the top 10. But that's not the shocking part. The shocking part is what he revealed seconds later. Because this wasn't a bad lap. This wasn't traffic. This wasn't even a setup mistake. This was a hidden flaw inside the RB22, costing Red Bull over 1 full second per lap. And here's where it becomes a real problem. Red Bull tried to fix the car overnight. They changed everything. And somehow, made it worse. From oversteer to understeer. From unstable to completely unpredictable. And now even the team is admitting something they never say. They don't fully understand their own car. But this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because while Verstappen is eliminated, his rookie teammate makes it into Q3. Same car. Same conditions. Completely different result. So what is really killing the RB22? Why does the car change every single lap? And how did Verstappen expose the truth, live, during qualifying? Because by the end of this video, you'll realize this is not just a bad session. This is the moment Red Bull lost control. Subscribe now, because the final detail explains everything. It didn't start in qualifying. It started hours before, when nobody was really paying attention. Final practice. The last chance to understand the car. The last chance to fix it. And instead, Red Bull walked straight into the problem. Verstappen goes out, pushes, and the lap time doesn't come. Not even close. Over a second off the leaders. And that number changes everything. Because in Formula 1, a second is not a setup issue. It's a warning sign. But inside the garage, they still believed they had control. They thought they knew exactly what was wrong. Too much oversteer. The rear stepping out. A car that was too aggressive. Difficult, but manageable. So they reacted. Aggressively. They made big setup changes overnight. The kind of changes you only make when you're confident. Confident that you've found the problem. But this is where everything begins to collapse. Because when the car goes back on track, it's worse. Not in the same way. In a completely different way. The oversteer is gone. But now, the front doesn't respond. The car refuses to turn. Heavy understeer. And suddenly, Verstappen is fighting a different problem. Every corner becomes a compromise. Too slow on entry. Too cautious on exit. No flow. No rhythm. And that's when something clicks. Because when a car changes this drastically, from one extreme to another, it means one thing. You're not solving the problem. You're chasing it. Every change creates a new weakness. Every adjustment moves the car, but never in the right direction. And for a driver like Verstappen, that's where the real issue begins. Not speed. Not grip. Confidence. Because now, he doesn't know what the car will do next. One corner it understeers. The next, the rear suddenly moves again. No consistency. No predictability. And Suzuka is the worst place for that. Fast corners. No margin for hesitation. You either trust the car completely, or you lose time everywhere. And Verstappen couldn't trust it. But here's the detail that changed everything inside Red Bull. Because this wasn't happening in just one corner. It was happening across the entire lap. Different symptoms. Same root problem. And that's when the engineers started to realize something uncomfortable. This is not just balance. This is not just setup. This is something deeper. Because if it was setup, the car would improve in one clear direction. Instead, every change made it unpredictable. Which means only one thing. They don't fully understand the car yet. And in Formula 1, that's the beginning of panic. Because if you don't understand the car, you can't control it. You can only react to it. And by the time qualifying begins, that lack of control becomes impossible to hide. And this is where everything becomes visible. Because qualifying doesn't hide problems. It exposes them. Q1 begins. And immediately, something feels wrong. The Red Bull is not just slow. It looks uncomfortable. Every corner is a fight. Turn in, hesitation. Mid-corner, correction. Exit, no traction. And Verstappen is already pushing. Already searching. But nothing connects. The lap doesn't flow. And at Suzuka, if the lap doesn't flow, you're losing time everywhere. He barely makes it through. 11th. Right on the limit. And that's the first real alarm. Because when a driver like Verstappen is struggling just to survive Q1, you're not dealing with a small issue anymore. But there's still hope. Q2. New tires. Better track. One clean lap, that's all it takes. And this is where everything falls apart. First run. Same problems. But more intense. The rear doesn't settle. The front doesn't bite. And in Sector 2, the most important part of the circuit, the car completely breaks down. High speed. fast direction changes. The exact place where confidence matters most. And Verstappen lifts. Not because he wants to, because he has to. The car moves underneath him. Not once. Again. And again. Unpredictable. And that's when it happens. That moment. That realization. Because in that split second, he understands something crucial. This is not a lap he can fix. This is not a problem he can drive around. This is the limit of the car. And then, the radio. Calm. Clear. Almost cold. The car has a big problem. I can't rely on the rear anywhere. I can't push in high speed. We have no pace. No emotion. No panic in his voice. But inside the team, that message changes everything. Because that's not feedback. That's confirmation. The problem is real. And it's everywhere. But here's where the situation turns even worse. Because while Verstappen is struggling, the timing screens show something unexpected. His teammate, a rookie, going faster, cleaner, more stable. And suddenly, Red Bull has a new problem. Not just performance. Comparison. Same car, different result. And that creates pressure. Because now the question is unavoidable. Is it the driver? Or is it the car? But inside the garage, they already know the answer. Because the data shows something clear. The car behaves differently depending on how it's driven. A very narrow window. A tiny range where the car actually works. Stay inside it, and you survive. Step outside, and everything collapses. And Verstappen is constantly falling outside that window. Not because he's making mistakes. Because the window is too small. Too sensitive. Too unpredictable. And that's what makes this moment so critical. Because now, it's not about fixing the setup. It's about understanding the car. And right now, Red Bull doesn't fully have that understanding. And when that happens in Formula 1, panic is not a reaction. It's a consequence. And this is where the panic inside Red Bull becomes real. Because once you understand the problem, you also understand the consequence. This is not something you fix before the race. This is not something you solve with a better setup. This is structural. And internally, they already know it. The issue is not just balance. It's the floor. The aerodynamic platform. The very foundation of how the car generates downforce. And when that part is unstable, everything else becomes unpredictable. One lap feels fine. The next, completely different. Same driver. Same setup. Different behavior. And that's exactly what Verstappen was feeling. A car that changes, corner by corner. A car that cannot be trusted. And here's why that's so dangerous. Because this kind of problem creates a very narrow operating window. A tiny sweet spot, where the car actually works. But step outside that window, even slightly, and performance disappears instantly. That's why the setup changes failed. That's why the balance kept flipping. That's why Verstappen couldn't find consistency. Because the car is not stable enough to stay in that window. And now, every adjustment becomes a gamble. Too aggressive, the rear snaps. Too safe, the front disappears. Too low, instability. Too high, no downforce. There is no safe solution. Only temporary ones. And that's what creates panic. Because if the problem is in the floor, you're not adjusting the car. You're redesigning it. Weeks of development. Wind tunnel testing. Simulation work. New parts. And even then, no guarantee. Because first, you have to understand the problem. And Red Bull already admitted something critical. There are parts of the RB22 they still don't fully understand. Think about that. A team that dominated Formula 1, now trying to figure out its own car. And while they search for answers, the season keeps moving. Race after race. Points being scored. Gaps increasing. Because while Red Bull is reacting, others are executing. Mercedes. Consistent. Controlled. Fast. McLaren. Sharp. Predictable. Always extracting performance. And Red Bull is stuck in uncertainty. And we already know the gap. Around 1 second per lap. 1 second. That's not a deficit you manage. That's a deficit that defines your season. Because over a full race distance, that gap becomes massive, unrecoverable. And suddenly, the objective changes. It's no longer about winning. It's about damage limitation. Survival. Staying close enough until a solution arrives. But here's the final piece. The part that connects everything. Because this isn't just about the car. It's about the driver. For years, Red Bull built everything around Verstappen. A car that matched his style perfectly. Sharp front. Loose rear. Maximum rotation. But this car doesn't behave like that. And now, for the first time, Verstappen is the one adapting. Not the team. Not the car. him. And that's the biggest shift of all. Because when a driver like Verstappen cannot extract performance from the machine beneath him, it's not just a technical issue. It's a warning. A warning that something deeper is broken. And if Red Bull doesn't fix it fast enough, this won't just be a difficult phase. This will be the moment. They lost control of an entire era. And now, everything leads to this final realization. Because what happened at Suzuka is not isolated. It's a pattern. Australia, off the pace. China, still struggling. Japan, eliminated in Q2. And not just eliminated. Over a full second behind the leaders. The gap is not closing. It's growing. And that's the clearest sign of all. Because in Formula 1, if you understand your car, you improve. You refine. You get closer. But if you don't understand it, every update becomes a risk. Every change, a guess. And Red Bull right now is guessing. They brought updates to Suzuka. New parts. New ideas. And instead of moving forward, they went backwards. That's not bad luck. That's misdirection. That's a team pushing in the wrong direction, because they don't fully understand the problem yet. And that's exactly what Verstappen exposed. Not with emotion. Not with frustration. With clarity. Because when he said the car cannot be trusted, he wasn't describing a feeling. He was describing a limitation. A hard limit. And once a driver reaches that conclusion, everything changes. Because now, it's not about pushing harder. It's about accepting the ceiling. And that's the most dangerous place any top team can be. Because while Red Bull is trying to raise that ceiling, others are already above it. Mercedes, executing every weekend. McLaren, maximizing every opportunity. No drama. No confusion. Just performance. And that creates pressure. Internal pressure. The kind that builds quietly, but hits hard. Engineers questioning direction. Drivers losing confidence. Decisions becoming more aggressive. More desperate. And that's where mistakes happen. But here's the final truth. The one that explains everything we've seen. Red Bull didn't just lose performance. They lost understanding. And in Formula 1, understanding is everything. Without it, speed doesn't matter. Talent doesn't matter. Even a driver like Verstappen cannot compensate. And that's why Suzuka feels different. Because this is not just a bad qualifying. This is not just a difficult car. This is the moment where a dominant team realizes it no longer controls the situation. And now, the entire season depends on one question. Not how fast Verstappen is. Not how good the strategy is. But how quickly Red Bull can rediscover what they've lost. Because if that answer comes too late, then this moment, this quiet, controlled radio message, this unexpected elimination, will be remembered for one reason. Not as a failure, but as the beginning of the end.